Here's a question that trips up almost everyone. Is debt good or bad? And the honest answer is, that's the wrong question. Because the same dollar of debt can build your future or quietly drain it, depending on what you do with it. Borrowing money to buy a house that grows in value is a completely different animal from borrowing money to buy a TV you'll forget about in 2 years. Same word, debt. Totally different consequences. So today we're going to stop sorting debt into good and bad piles. Because that's lazy and, frankly, it gets people into trouble. Instead, I'm going to give you a simple framework. 4 factors you can run any loan through in about 30 seconds to figure out whether it's working for you or against you. This isn't financial advice. It's a way of thinking. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. Let's get into it. Factor 1. What does the debt actually buy? This is the big one. The first thing to ask is whether the money you borrowed buys something that grows in value or earns you income, or something that loses value the second you own it. On one side, you've got what people call productive or appreciating debt. A mortgage buys a home that historically tends to hold or grow its value over time. A student loan, when it leads to a degree that meaningfully raises your earnings, buys you a bigger paycheck for decades. A loan that starts or expands a business buys you something that can generate cash flow. In each case, the borrowed money is a tool. It buys an asset or an income stream. On the other side, you've got consumption debt. This is borrowing to buy things that lose value or get used up. Credit card balances from everyday spending. A financed phone or laptop that's worth half as much the day after you open the box. A lot of car loans live here too because most cars lose value the moment you drive them off the lot. Now, buying things you enjoy isn't a crime. The point isn't that consumption is evil. The point is that when you borrow to buy something that's shrinking in value, you're paying interest on a melting ice cube. The debt outlives the thing it bought. You can be making payments on a vacation a year after the tan has faded, or on a gadget that's already been replaced by a newer model. The fun is long gone, but the bill keeps showing up. And this is exactly why the good versus bad labels are so sticky and so misleading. People hear a mortgage is good debt and assume any mortgage is automatically fine. They hear credit cards are bad debt and assume every card balance is a disaster. But the label is just a starting point. What the borrowed money actually buys is the real story. And even that's only the first of our 4 factors. So factor 1. Does this debt buy something that grows or something that shrinks? Hold that thought, because the next factor can completely change the answer. Factor 2. The interest rate. This is where a lot of good versus bad conversations fall apart, because the interest rate can flip the whole thing. Let me show you what I mean with 2 examples. And I want to be crystal clear. These are illustrative numbers to make the math obvious, not current market rates. Imagine a mortgage at 3%, fixed, and imagine a credit card at 24%. Those 2 debts are not in the same universe. At 3%, the cost of borrowing is low and predictable, and it's locked in. At 24%, the balance compounds against you fast. Carry it long enough, and you can end up paying far more in interest than the original purchase ever cost. That word, revolving, matters. Credit cards are revolving debt. The balance rolls over month to month and interest keeps stacking on whatever you didn't pay off. This is exactly the high APR revolving debt we dug into in our credit card videos. It is the textbook example of debt working against you because the rate is high and there's no asset growing on the other side to outrun it. A low fixed rate gives you certainty in time. A high variable rate gives you a clock that's always running. Here's a way to feel the difference. At a low fixed rate, time is roughly on your side. The asset has room to grow faster than the cost of the loan. At a high revolving rate, time is the enemy. Every month you don't clear the balance, the interest compounds, and the hole gets a little deeper before you've even bought anything new. So before you judge any debt, ask, what's the rate? Is it fixed or can it climb? And is it the kind that compounds against you every single month? 2 loans for the exact same dollar amount can be a smart move or a slow leak, depending on nothing but that number. Factor 3. Does the payment fit your life? You can borrow for the perfect appreciating asset at a beautiful low rate and still get crushed if the monthly payment doesn't fit your actual budget. This is the factor people skip because the math on paper looks fine. But debt isn't lived on paper. It's lived month to month out of your real cash flow. Here's the test. After this new payment, do you still have breathing room? Can you cover your essentials, handle a surprise car repair or a medical bill and still put something aside? Or is this payment going to have you living right on the edge, one bad month away from missing it? Because here's what happens when a payment is too big. You stop being able to absorb shocks. A normal-sized emergency turns into a crisis. You start reaching for the credit card to cover the gap. And now you've stacked high-rate bad debt on top of the debt that was supposed to be the smart one. A manageable payment is one you can keep making even when life gets a little rough. If a loan only works when everything goes perfectly, it doesn't actually work. Real budgets need a cushion. Factor 4. Need versus want. This last one is less about math and more about honesty. Ask yourself, am I borrowing for something I genuinely need or something I just want right now? Now, want isn't a dirty word. There's nothing wrong with wanting things. But borrowing turns a want into a long-term obligation. You enjoy the want for a moment. You carry the debt for months or years. And every dollar going to interest on something you wanted is a dollar that can't go towards something you'll need later. The need versus want filter is really about timing and trade-offs. A need often justifies borrowing because the cost of going without is high. You can't get to work. You can't get the qualification. You can't keep a roof over your head. A want can almost always wait, or be saved up for, which means you get the same thing without paying the borrowing tax on top. Waiting a few months to buy something with cash instead of credit doesn't just save you the interest. It also gives you time to figure out whether you even wanted it that badly in the first place. A surprising amount of must-have stuff quietly stops mattering once the urge passes. So when you feel the urge to finance something, just pause and ask honestly. Need or want? That one question kills a lot of bad debt before it's ever born. And now the part nobody tells you. Good debt can go bad, and bad debt is sometimes unavoidable. This is where the simple, good pile, bad pile thinking really breaks down. So let's break it on purpose. Take the classic good debts. A mortgage is supposed to be the gold standard. But buy too much house, stretch the payment past what your budget can handle, and that good debt fails factor 3 and starts running your life. A student loan is supposed to be an investment in earning power. But borrow heavily for a path that doesn't raise your income, and it fails factor 1. There's no payoff on the other side, just the bill. Good debt isn't good because of its name. It's good only when it actually passes the factors, and it cuts the other way too. Sometimes so-called bad debt is the least bad option in front of you. A genuine emergency with no savings and no other access to credit, sometimes a card, or even a high-cost short-term loan, is the only bridge to next week. That doesn't make it good. It makes it a tool you reach for carefully, eyes open, with a plan to get out fast. The danger is when emergency borrowing quietly becomes a lifestyle. So the real picture isn't two buckets. It's a spectrum, and where any given debt lands depends on the factors, not the label. Let's pull it together. Debt isn't simply good or bad. You judge it with 4 questions plus 1 reality check. What does it buy? Something that grows in value or income, or something that shrinks? What's the interest rate? Low and fixed or high and revolving like a credit card? Does the payment actually fit your budget with a cushion left over? And is it a real need or just a want you could wait on? Run any loan through those, and here's the bottom line. The real test of debt is the rate versus the value or return it unlocks, and whether you can comfortably manage the payments. A low-rate loan that buys something growing with a payment you barely notice is debt working for you. A high-rate balance on something shrinking with a payment that stresses your budget is debt working against you. Everything else lives somewhere on the spectrum in between. If this reframed how you see debt, hit subscribe, because next time we're talking about the closest thing to actual free money, the 401k match, and the free money most people leave behind every single paycheck. You don't want to miss that one. We'll see you there. Remember, this is education, not financial advice. Now you know how money actually works.